Welcome to our channel. This video is about our latest backyard project. Bear with me, I forgot to take a video of this first short part, so you'll see a few pictures instead. Okay, so we started off with an uneven, ugly, weed-filled back area here, but we removed the weeds, roots, and mulch, and then sprayed the whole area with weed killer. We then put down a weed barrier. Side note, don't get the one from Walmart, they don't last as long. I did a bunch of research online and found one that farmers often recommend, so I'll link it in the description below, like all other things we will be using for this project. We use 6-inch galvanized landscape staples, and this is important because you don't want them to rust immediately. We unfortunately ran out, and I went to Walmart to get some more. But all of the ones from Walmart ended up rusting pretty quick, so I changed them back out later. Anyway, back to the project. So the next step is going to be building the frame for the bench. I will make it 10 by 10 feet. So we went to Home Depot and got 4 10 feet by 6-inch by 1-inch pressure-treated wood, and we also bought a 2-inch by 2-inch pressure-treated board that we used as stakes in the corners to mount the frame boards to. I try to make sure the whole frame is level, so that's why you can see the frame is significantly higher of the ground in the front than it is in the back. In hindsight, I wish I would have buried the frame into the ground in the back, so the front would be even with the ground, since now I had to figure out how to fill the hole in the front. Alright, so I found these blocks buried in my backyard when we were cleaning out this area, so I'm going to use them to stop the gravel from coming out. Some of our gravel was just delivered, so we can get started. Yay! We ordered 2 tons of crushed Crete Fine pieces from our local landscape supplier. We ended up being short, so we had to get 16 more bags of Paver base from Home Depot later on. Don't make that mistake, cause individual bags are significantly more expensive. Okay, it's 11 p.m. and we are still shoveling. We're definitely getting tired. I think that is the 12th load. Looks like we got a few more to go. Okay, so now that we finally have the Paver base in place, we went ahead and compressed it with the hand tamper. We tried to level it by putting a long level on it and filling the spots that were a little bit lower. Making sure it's level is really important, so take your time. So before I built the structure, I tried to plan roughly how I wanted my backyard to look. Then I focused on just the bench to see how many blocks I will need. Here is my Google Sheet sketch and the amounts of concrete blocks and caps I was thinking I will need. Next, we started with leveling sand, and then leveling each block. The first row is the most important. Once you have that one down, the next rows should be much easier and less time-consuming. Also make sure the corners are square, like I am checking here right now. Looks like this one is square. And looks like this one is good to go too. Now, the other side. Looking pretty good. Now make sure the overall blocks are level. I also checked each individual block with a short level when I put them down just to be sure. Alright, first layer is finally done. By no means am I an expert, but I think it turned out pretty well. I think I used a total of 28 blocks here and didn't have to cut anything. A slight little problem that has come up is that the frame is bending outward on this one side, as you can see, which is why it is creating a space between the frame and the concrete blocks here. I'll have to reinforce that board from the outside with some metal stakes later. Okay, it's pretty late here now, but I'll have to say the second layer is going pretty quickly. Most of the blocks were pretty level right off the bat, except for some of them that are a little uneven on the bottom, so I had to chisel that away, otherwise they would have been rocking back and forth. So yeah, you can see that a little bit right here. If you get them at Home Depot, or wherever you get them, try to make sure you get some that are nice and flat, so save yourself some extra work. Alright, third layer is done except for right here in the front corner. I'll need a single block here instead for the armrest. Quick little break. Oh, here you can also see the 4-foot rebar we got that we will use next. So in order to reinforce the back wall, we'll use rebar stakes every other hole, so basically every block will have contact with rebar. We hammered them into the ground until they were just a little bit lower than the top of the blocks. After hammering in the rebar, we'll fill those holes with concrete mix. Here is our quick little late-night Home Depot run for some concrete mix. Alright, let's get started with filling these holes. First, we'll need to mix the concrete. Follow the directions on the packet on how much water to add. We didn't have a concrete mixer, so we just used our wheelbarrow and some shovels to mix it up. We then shoveled the mix into the bucket and then poured it into the holes. We let it dry for 48 hours and then came back to glue on the caps. We just used regular construction adhesive to glue them on, and we had to cut a couple of them. We used a chisel and a hammer, which worked just fine. We then just tapped the caps with the mallet to make sure they are nice and flat. Okay, here is the built bench. Let's add some stucco to make it even more stable. Again, make sure to follow the directions on the stucco for how much water you need. Before applying the stucco, make sure you wet the concrete. That will help with it sticking to the wall. After applying the stucco, we waited about 15 minutes and then went over it with a soaked sponge and wiped it smooth. We came back about an hour later and sprayed it to keep it moist. To prevent it from cracking, it's important to keep it moist for at least the first 48 hours. Here is the paint we ended up using. We did 2 coats, but we waited 60 days to let the stucco cure before painting. Okay, here you can see the painted bench. We now have to add the frame for the seating. We used pressure-treated 2x4s and screw them in with concrete screws. Make your life easier and get the hex head screws. We had to make sure we measured how thick the pressure-treated plywood was to end it evenly with the front concrete blocks. Again, make sure everything is level. We added some of the 2x4s across too, from additional support. Then we cut the plywood to size and laid it in. One side was sticking up a little, so we screwed the plywood down into the frame. I forgot to take a video of laying the plywood, but here we already laid the seating tiles just to see how it's going to fit and look. We used these tiles from Lowe's that look and feel pretty nice. Make sure the pattern matches before you glue them down. We had to cut 2 end pieces to size, so we ended up using a circular saw with a diamond blade, and I had my mom spray some water while I cut the tile for a much cleaner cut. Before you glue them down, clean them off with a broom to make sure nothing is under the tiles to make it uneven. We then glued down the tiles with construction adhesive. I ran out of adhesive here, so make sure you apply more than me. Since I ran out of adhesive, we started laying the concrete caps for the fireplace. Last step was to caulk all the seams between the tiles and the bench. For the floor by the bench, we decided to get these rubber pavers. They were super easy to lay down and cut to size. They're also nice and soft and feel great to walk on. We added these fiberglass medium lava rocks from Amazon at the bottom of the fire pit. And then on the outside of the bench frame, you can see I added the metal stakes to keep the frame from bending more. Here is the final product. We know it's not perfect, but we really like how it turned out. Especially because we know we built it ourselves. Now we just have to finish the rest of the backyard. Stay tuned and subscribe to see how it turns out. Thanks for watching.